In the scenes, time now for your favorite show in the afternoon, Behind the Scenes at BaaD Radio. Stand by, it's time to do our thing.
You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo!
My compliments, little lady.
Commercial!
Break for 30 seconds.
You are now listening to BaaD Radio.
Hello and welcome to BaaD Radio. BaaD stands for Business at a Distance. This is a show about local businesses and business networking. We are here in the News Radio WFLA Orlando studios from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I'm your host, Angela Smaritto. And in studio with me, we have our producer, Melissa Fox.
Hey!
How are you doing today, darling?
I'm good.
Very cool. And then next to me, we have Melissa Jacob with Striking Brand.
Hello.
Mm-hmm. So she is our videographer, but she is also a photographer. And if you go to baadradio.com, you can see all the previous episodes of BaaD Radio. And actually, I'm going to introduce our guest in just a second, but she's on there already now too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to strikingbrand.com, you can see all of Melissa's other work because, as I mentioned, she is a videographer as well as a photographer. All right. Our guests, well, we have a power couple in today. Please welcome attorneys Kristine Tucker and Joe Coughlan with Coughlan's Law.
Hi.
Thank you.
I've never had guests come in matching shirts before, and I really like it a lot.
We should start a thing.
So, Kristine, you've been on the show once before, but this is Joe's first time. I can't see Kristine's face, so we're just going to have to pretend like we can see each other.
I can see the top of your head.
Okay,
so
that works.
And I know what you look like. So,
So this is Joe's first time in. So, Kristine said you were a little nervous. How you feeling now?
I think it's going to be all right.
Okay, I think so too. You don't look nervous. You look very calm. But first, we're going to talk about the networking news, and it is brought to us by Symphonic CBD. Symphonic CBD is a branch of Live Your Best Life, both advocates for Green Compass Global. Green Compass products are USDA, organic, lab-tested, non-GMO, made in the USA, and cruelty-free CBD products, and they are key to making calmness a habit. And they also have CBD products for our fur babies. To get more information on the benefits of CBD, visit symphonic-cbd.com. That's symphonic-cbd.com. So for networking news, I talked to both Kristine and Joe earlier because I wanted to direct this segment towards attorneys and different things like networking opportunities for attorneys. And they started to rattle all this stuff up. And I was like, okay, hold on. Just hold the show because we're going to actually talk about it on the show. So I'm going to go back to my original statement is as somebody's coming up and they're going to law school, are there networking opportunities for them to go to in order to get a little bit of a step ahead? Or is there anything for that available?
yeah, there's actually a lot. And some of it depends on the practice area you want to go into, which as a law student, you don't know what your area is going to be until you get out and you get your first job. That's just what it is.
Is that real? So
It is.
When you both started law school, you didn't know what branch of the law you wanted to study?
I think everyone who wants to be an attorney has an idea, and you start working in the field, you start doing some of it, and part of it clicks for you, and some of it doesn't resonate as much as you thought it would, and it changes throughout the schooling.
Right.
A lot of things you thought you would do as an attorney, maybe as a child or getting up, once you start doing it, you realize it's not for you, and you're drawn somewhere else.
That's interesting. I've never realized that. I kind of figured people had an idea when they started law school.
Right.
But-
But I guess once you get into it, you learn more about it.
Yeah. For me, I got lucky. I was doing this area of law as a paralegal for a while, long while. So I kind of knew, but it didn't mean that that's where I was going to end up as a lawyer. So, but back to the question, there's a lot of, there's different bar sections. One of them that I'm on the executive council for is the real property probate and trust section. So
It's called Reptile.
Reptile is the our acronym.
She
our
kept saying it to
nickname.
me earlier, and I was like, "Are we talking about amphibians here, or are
Right.
we talking about four-legged lizards?" And she's like, "No."
Yeah. So, and what that is with the section, what that section does is they get together quarterly and they have different subcommittees and they review the laws and they review different cases that came down or places they have to fix it, and they discuss how to fix it and what we should bring to the legislature to fix any problems that come along. Right. So maybe a really bad case comes down. And we're all kind of like, oh, no, that's not going to work overall. That's a nightmare.
Right.
So that's what we do, right? And in that, you have some of the best minds in those areas. And people, I find a lot, especially with law students, they're like, oh, I hated property. I hated wills. But the class you take in law school is just, it's principle. It's not practice.
Right.
So sometimes once they meet these attorneys and they go to the council meetings and they kind of see how it really works, they kind of get into it.
Is anybody what qualifications do you have to have in order to be invited or to?
Well, as a law student, the section always welcomes law students to go. In fact, I'm kind of glad we're talking about that right now because for especially the local law students, and I've been, on FAMU's campus and Barry's campus quite a bit in the last couple of weeks talking about it to students, but they have an opportunity that doesn't always come up because these meetings that happen all over the state.
Okay.
Right? So, it may be that one February I have to be in the Keys, which is so terrible. And then the next I have to be in Boca, and then I have to be in the Panhandle, and then I hate
that.
Right, it's terrible. Oh my gosh. The only constant is July with the breakers, and go to the breakers. Ew. But there's a meeting in November in Tampa, and then there's a meeting in February in Orlando. So anybody local, they love it, especially for law students, right? Because every time they suspect there are students, every subsection, and there's when I tell you there's a whole bunch of committees going on all at once. You think property, it's like commercial and title and and all this stuff that I do not practice, so I don't know all the rest of them, but there's a lot of them. And then on my side, there's all this probate law and procedure, all these different committees going on at once. And they'll start each meeting and say, do we have any law students? Please get up, introduce yourself, and, what year and what school. And the second you do that,
oh my God, you're in front of all of these attorneys.
Right. And then you have all these attorneys. Some of them literally wrote the books. Wow. I mentioned that at Barry. I was there last night. And I forgot to bring all my, the books that I use in practice with me. And I was like, guys, I wish I'd remembered because I would rattle off the list of the authors and I'd be like, so that guy chairs that one, this girl, this chick chairs the da-da-da-da-da. And these people really literally wrote the book. So it's a really, really cool opportunity for them. And especially because, I don't forget what it was like in law school. You're terrified to do anything that's not studying, right?
Yeah.
And,
so absolutely. You guard your calendar.
Right. You're terrified. But it's a great opportunity. And things like that, even if you end up, I've heard, because I've mentored students pretty much since I got out of law school. And I've had students, a couple of years down where I'm so proud now they've been barred 5-6 years,
right?
And they're like, I loved going to reptile even though I practiced this, and they've made connections and all that.
It sounds like a good resource too.
It is an amazing resource.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because I didn't necessarily have a legal background. I wasn't a paralegal before law school, didn't come from a legal family, so it was a great way for me to get exposed to the legal community that I did not have connections. And there's something about attorneys when they meet law students, they have a tendency to want to mentor them, but they also look at them as possible interns,
well, that's what I was
who
going to
can
say
help
too.
me with a project coming up this summer. And you get into the law school, so it's great exposure.
And a
both for
foot in
law
the
students,
door.
absolutely. Internships lead to summer internships, might lead to the first job at a law school.
Right.
And same thing with a new attorney. When you're a first-year attorney coming out, you don't have all the connections. Everyone you knew in law school is now dispersed across the country, possibly. So getting involved in these sections and with your local chapters is a great way to reestablish those connections.
And how does somebody find the information to do that?
Well, there's the Florida Bar, which is a great resource. And then once again, in your county, like a state like Florida, you can go to your county. So Orlando, you can go to the Orlando County Bar Association. If you were in Hillsborough County Bar Association. Follows the same model throughout
So you
the
just
state.
get on their website and it will list off the
It'll
different...
have all of the different chapters you can join, and then they'll have their individual websites, which may have some nominal student dues. A student is always going to get in there cheaper than a professional. They're encouraging students to join. And these are also the same resources that people would look for pro bono legal help if they can't afford. So it's these same institutions kind of cover all of it. So those are your sites that can really be the jumping off point for your local area.
Well, that was fascinating, and we probably are going to touch base on that a little bit more, but that music means that we're going to break, and so when we get back, I want to jump into how Coughlan's Law got started. So stay tuned for more BaaD Radio.
If you're interested in networking with BaaD Radio, go to BaaD.radio.com. We do this for you every Sunday from 11 until 1. Business at a Distance will return on News Radio WFLA, Orlando.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a squeaky. Can you hear it when I move it?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can mute. The,
Huh?
You can mute it.
Yeah,
That will mute this sound? Or, okay.
if she says so. Hold on.
Advanced technology.
I know, you need some WD-40 up in here.
Okay, we're good there. All right, stand by for the second segment. As soon as I get, there we go. Come on, computer, as usual. Boop, boop. And segment starting now.
I step back a little bit.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore. Hey guys, it's time to head over to Premier Couple Superstore and surprise your sweetheart with that sexy bedroom outfit. Premier Couple Superstore has got a huge selection of lingerie, shoes, toys, games, love oils, and a ton of great gifts. With Premier Couple Superstore, you don't pay those high prices because you're going to go directly to the source. 5009 South OBT, or shop online, because a couple that plays together stays together. Oh, that was cute.
I don't know if we want something cute at the end of that. But
Actually, she's got a point there. Yeah, I like the oh yeah
I
better.
don't know if we want kids at the end of that one.
No.
She has a valid
That's
point.
a crowd.
Oh, okay.
I mean, really, listen. It's adults.
It's a crowd of children.
I know.
Thank you.
I hear kids.
You're a preschool.
All right, carry on.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And we're here with the power couple from Coughlan's Law, Kristine and Joe. So before we went to break, we were talking about some networking opportunities, but I want to backtrack right now and actually talk about the firm and how it got started. So I guess it would start by, first of all, how you two met. Were you an attorney when you guys met?
We met in law school, so
Okay.
neither one of
Yeah.
us were attorneys quite
Okay.
yet.
You were law
Cute.
students.
Yes.
Yes.
So what about the whole thing about you don't want to do anything but study? Huh?
Yeah.
Doesn't
Well-
sound
Where'd
like
that
it happened
go?
here.
I mean, you got to
Hold on.
network sometimes.
Right. And in fairness, we didn't get together until after I was barred and you were about to take the bar.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
So she will
Right.
always lord it over me that she's been an attorney slightly longer.
Right. But now he can lord over me that he's been barred New Jersey longer than me. I got my results yesterday.
I saw your
so,
post.
Yeah.
When
very
you post,
excited.
when you say stuff like that, I'm like, I don't know what she means, but it sounds good, so I'm gonna give it a heart.
Right. Thank you. It's very exciting.
How many
Um,
different states can you
right.
practice?
Right now, well, I'm still in just Florida
Okay.
until I get sworn in. And Joe is Florida and New Jersey.
Okay.
Now, why would you want to be an attorney in a state that you don't live in?
Oh, well, we have family up there, so
Okay.
it's nice to be able to advise them as an attorney. If you're not licensed in a state, you just can't give any advice. You're not qualified, and you're going to cause a lot of problems. So, like I said, we have family up there, so we thought about it. And also, nowadays, the way business works, as you know, everything's remote. Court still happens a lot in person, but you can take cases on all over the country now, and you can effectively work them.
That's really interesting.
Right.
So, in order to become barred in a state, I mean, is it simply? And I don't mean simply by as I'm not simplifying the test, but is it you have to take that exam?
Sure. It depends on which state in the country. So Florida, example, has its own bar exam. I say it doesn't play well with any other state. It doesn't have what they call reciprocity. You get a license in one state, you can practice in another state. Historically, we all think it's because everyone wants to retire to Florida, so lawyers don't want a whole lot of attorneys retiring down here and being able to practice.
Ah,
Are there a lot of states that do that?
California does the same thing.
I mean, so there's fewer that don't play
Don't
nice.
play exactly. Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's a trend now. They have what's called the uniform bar exam, and I believe there's at last count about 25 states participate in that. So that's what we just took in New Jersey.
Okay.
So when you pass that, each state can set its own passing score, but it's the same test throughout. So
okay.
if you get a high enough score, you can be licensed in any one of those states. clearly, once you get your license, you need to maintain those states' requirements, continuing
Right.
educations, good faith stuff like that.
Nice.
So you guys met in law school,
Yeah.
and were you both going towards the same field of law?
No, well, we met. The reason we met is because, and I was notorious for this in law school. If there was a school organization that needed an officer, because they have to have X amount of officers, or they have to dissolve the chapter.
Okay.
So it was one of those that, like, someone would call me up and they'd be like, just talk to that person. Like, you don't have to do it, but just, if you don't, just talk to them for a few minutes. So I had a friend call up and say they were, it was the Stonewall chapter at FAMU, was about to dissolve. And she's like, they're having a networking event, just go. You don't have to, just go. And I was a night student. Joe was a day student. So he had the same conversation. And by the end of the night, you were the president, I was the vice president. And then,
I'm going to take this information to our BNI chapter,
Yeah.
just so you know.
yeah. So, and we ended up doing all these events together. And it was kind of fun because when we first took over as officers for the Stonewall chapter, it was really, really small. Like, we didn't have a whole lot of members. So between us and the rest of our board, we were like, all right. And it was Joe's idea, right? Joe's like, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go get these cards printed up, and we're just going to paper the school with them. And we're going to show up one morning, and we're going to have, like, coffee and donuts and orange juice, and they won't know the difference. Like, these new students are going to think that we're huge. And sure enough,
It
Worked.
worked.
it worked.
That's awesome.
It's law school's version of guerrilla marketing.
I
Right.
think it's
Oh,
fantastic.
I love that.
I mean, like, we were taping stuff in the restrooms, and then,
I
they were
call
like,
it boots on the street. That's
Yeah.
what we call it, like, for the advertising agency. We're like, if you need a campaign that's boots on the street, we can do that too.
yeah.
So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it. So you guys did that, and so you grew this chapter that was about to dissipate all the way into, like, one of the biggest ones on campus.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, every organization has ups and downs, but yes, it's still live and healthy there on campus these years later, and that's great to see.
yeah.
That's awesome. I love that story. And then so take us on from there. Next, it was you guys graduated. You're dating. It's you've passed the bar. Did you start and practice together, or did you guys go to different employers?
Yeah, no, separately. at
Yeah,
first.
yeah, separately. So when I had first gotten out, I was looking for jobs, and it was like, I have bills I have to pay. So I started my own firm, and I had that
Right off the start.
Right. And I
Dang.
ended up with a lot of, it happens, like, we joke about it, ended up with a bunch of family law. And I had a trial, won the trial, was great, that was all great. But one of my old bosses had called me up when she found out I was barred. And it's the practice area that I really enjoy, which is the estates, and called me up, and she's like, hey, you want to come work for me? And I was like, yeah, I do. And then Joe went straight into workers' comp.
Yeah, like we said in the first segment, you don't always end up doing what you think you're going to start with. I thought I wanted to be chained to a desk doing contracts for companies all the time. It turned out I didn't like that as much, and one of my friends early in law school got me into workers' compensation, clerked with a judge during law school for it, and did defense, worked for insurance defense firms doing workers' compensation out of law school. Big firms, medium-sized firms, kind of moved around for that. Ultimately decided I don't like to work for the insurance companies. They are not, in fact, my friends.
That's like an ongoing theme.
I know.
Yeah, there's ebbs and flows. I tell people, we're two sides of the same coin. Ultimately, we're trying to protect citizens and give them what they're entitled to without being taken advantage on either side. So the pendulum's going to swing back and forth from year to year, and we're in an insurance-friendly time.
One thing I did not understand about being attorney, and I learned this through the BNI networking, is that when attorney launches their own firm, I just always thought, you get your law degree, you become a lawyer, and you're making, hundreds of $1,000s out of that's I know, but I mean,
You kind of think that.
I
Same
do.
thing with,
It is
I mean,
it's a
same thing with
surviving
doctors,
myth.
Yeah.
yeah. And because people are like, when talking about the best professions, doctors, lawyers,
Doctors,
you know,
lawyers, you guys just make buku bucks like that.
but it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a lot of hard work. And, sometimes even if, let's say you have a good quarter or whatever, when you break down how much you actually worked for
Don't
that
do it.
money,
I'd say
Yeah.
just don't do
You're
your
like-
what
I know.
you got paid
you
per
know,
hour.
and then, for Joe and I together, we are together 24 hours a day,
Right.
7 days a week. We work all the time. We went on a vacation. When we took the bar, we said, look, we're going to just book a cruise anywhere, 5 days, 5 days. I just don't want any internet. I don't want any phone. And we had a case go to appeal, 2 weeks
Yeah, right-
before,
right
and
before.
it was an expedited calendar. So we looked at each other and we're like, all right. I think for 5 days we brought 5 suitcases. One of them had clothing in it. The rest of it had all of our case files. I mean, we brought, it was like
Jeez.
law school all over again.
Yeah.
We had, all of our books, our binder, all of our evidence, all of highlighters, everything. And,
I think we almost gave the porter a hernia when he tried to lift our
Oh,
case.
Right.
jeez. So it doesn't sound like much of a vacation.
You got to really love what you do.
well, we kind of did have fun.
Well,
we did.
We're going to go to break, and we won't be gone long, so stay tuned for more BaaD Radio with Coughlan's Law.
That's Angela Smaritto, your host, co-host, Melissa Jacob. I am Melissa Fox, and we will be right back with BaaD Radio.
I love that song.
I do too. I've decided I'm going to just give my head a break every once. We're just going to take a little 30 second here, because by the time after the
Love
second
it.
hour, by the time I'm done, my
Oh,
head
throbbing.
is
I can only
killing me
imagine.
because of my glasses. So I'm going to try to take this off for 30 seconds in between. That's so funny though, because I thought you become attorney.
You just print money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally rich. And you're like, nope, that is not the case.
Nope. And lawyers, I think doctors can get rid of their student loans in bankruptcy. We can't. We'll lose our license.
Yeah, I think they've swapped some of it. Historically, doctors used to discharge a lot of them through bankruptcy, and that's why student loans became so difficult to discharge. in bankruptcy.
Oh.
Yeah.
But for us, if we miss a student loan payment, the bar comes down. We could lose our license for it. So, it's not as
Alrighty.
fun as it sounds.
Hang on.
Well,
Good. Stand by.
Let me just check my phone because I know we have guests. I just want to make sure. I'm going to say sit tight. Have them sit tight. All right. Good to go. Thank you.
All right, here we go.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Frogger's Bar and Grill. So you're looking for some food and fun? You know what? I need to do that over again because
What happened?
I totally screwed it
All right,
up.
stand by.
Hold on. I have it messed up on here.
All right, well, you fix that. I'm going to start over.
Sorry.
Hey.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Take 2.
Okay. Now I've got it. I'm sorry. That's the first time I've ever done that.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, and this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Forge IT Consulting, providing a fully outsourced IT department with a personal touch for small business. No company is too small. ForgeITConsulting.com. And we are here with Coughlan's Law. We have Kristine and Joe. And actually, we talked a little bit about how they got started, how they met, and then the direction they went after college. So what eventually brought you two together to form Coughlan's Law? And I love the name, by the way. I want to talk about that a little bit. Cocktail, the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can start with that, or we can start how we came together. Your choice.
How it came together.
Okay. So like I said, I was doing insurance defense and decided that wasn't for me. And so I left that side and joined what we call the other side of the V. Started representing people making claims against insurance companies.
So
And-
I'm just out of curiosity. So when you say you do that, you're going to work, are you freelancing with other attorneys firms or?
When I was doing insurance defense?
No, afterwards.
No, I left and I joined another firm.
Another firm, okay.
Correct, yes. And that's what they did is personal injury. I brought workers' compensation knowledge to that firm, so we started doing that. And they continued with that now. And we have a great relationship. They're good colleagues. We just kind of outgrew it at a moment and decided, I think as a lot of businesses did in that COVID time, what do I want going into the years forward? Realized didn't want to do the insurance defense, didn't want to do what they call big law. The corporate world just wasn't exactly for me in that same way. I think at the same time, Kristine was feeling similar things. We had talked about it, started putting
What were
together
you doing
the
at the
resources.
time, Kristine?
I was working at a firm doing
estates?
with estates, yeah.
Okay.
And that's, like I said, we work together on some, but that's my primary area.
Okay.
And the people were great. My bosses were great. It just
Something was missing.
we for me, I kind of wanted my own culture. I wanted my own. It's like sometimes I'll tell people we have suits. If we have to go to court, you'll see that I have a suit. I do. I own suits, and I clean up real nice. But I don't want to have to do that every day, especially with, I'm often talking to people who just lost a loved one or preparing for that. It's pretty heavy stuff. So I'd rather be more comfortable and more casual and really focus on their needs than worry about a show.
No, I totally understand that, because that's another misconception, is that all attorneys are suit ties, kind of stuffy, kind of have a bit of arrogance. I've learned through networking as well is that is not the case either. So you guys were both kind of at that point where you're like, okay, we're not happy with what we're currently doing.
Yeah, and then July 2020, we founded the firm, and then got the brick and mortar. It started kind of virtually at first, and then we got the brick and mortar office a couple of months later, and it's been rolling since then.
Where is the brick and mortar?
It's off of Orange Blossom Trail and Lee Road. If you know Old Orlando, it's in the Rosemont area.
Okay. And so what made you decide, is it because you needed a place to separate a home from?
Little of column A, little of column B in that one. I think anybody who wants to hire an attorney needs to trust that they're going to be there, and brick and mortar still provides that. But more importantly, with a lot of what Kristine does, and I'll let her take over, that, you can't, it's not the same doing it Zoom or a telephone call. You need to speak. These are very sensitive conversations that you're having with people. You can't rush them. And so the office, it's still a need, I feel, for most attorneys.
I didn't think about that. I was just like, hey, you guys are together. You just save the money and work from home. But he does make a very valid point to have some place to go with, like, you sit down and have like a conversation with people about that. So, all right. So what was that you said Kristine was going to take over?
Oh, well, and another thing too is, Florida's really strict on the way you sign your estate planning documents. So this gives us a place where if somebody's done an estate plan, they come in, we schedule it, we have it signed. If there's anything that we have to change, I could do it right there on the spot. And we know that those documents are valid and good. And I don't have to worry about these people running into an issue later on when they really need them. So that's another thing about having the office that's nice.
So that's really interesting. So where the document's signed makes a difference?
It's not so much where, it's how. So we don't allow electronic notarization. The witnesses, Florida is, line of sight. So I have to
See it.
Yeah. I have to watch you sign it directly in front of me. I can't turn my head. I can't be in the other room. I can't be around the corner. We all have to sit there and watch each other sign it. And then the notary has to affirm that we've done it.
I totally agree with that. I think that, like, all that digital stuff makes it so people can get scammed.
Oh, yeah.
Way too much. I hear a commercial that talks about people getting their titles of their house stolen online. Is that a thing?
Yeah, and it's not an area that we practice, but yes, there's a lot of things that can be done with title agencies. And like Kristine mentioned earlier, she does the estate planning and the death side, but that group, that Reptile, they also do the real property. So when you go to those sections, they're talking about a lot of those things.
Right.
There's certain companies that they're all looking at that's like, there's some things that are going wrong. Do we need to look at that? Who do we need to inform? But yes, online, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
So in estate planning, I know it has to do with when someone passes and all of their belongings and kind of sorting that. Like what?
It's kind of both.
Okay.
Right. So, and a lot of people overlook. I mean, a lot of people will call it and be like, "Oh, I don't even have an estate." Yeah, you do.
It's not just where you live. It's
right.
like
it's not just where you live. It's like you have a toothbrush, right? You have like $10 in your bank account. You have something.
Okay.
But it's also there's documents that are really, really important when you're alive that people overlook. And those documents, it's like power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, all that kind of stuff. It avoids someone having to go get guardianship over you if something happens. So it's kind of a twofold, right? So you look at the best way to avoid probate. Not that probate is this horrible, terrible thing, but it could be really expensive, and two, oftentimes it'll freeze assets for a long period of time.
Time and money.
Yeah. Well, let's do this real quick. Let's explain to the audience what probate actually means.
Okay.
Let's give a scenario.
Okay. So, for example, right, and I'll address a misconception at the same time. I have a will, right, and my will says that I leave everything to Joe.
Okay.
But everything I have is titled in my name, doesn't have Joe as a beneficiary, doesn't have him as a co-owner. I die, right? So now Joe has this will. It says everything goes to him. In order to change the title over and to have that actually happen, Joe has to take that will down to the probate court and have a probate judge approve the will, that the will is valid, that he's a proper person to get things, and go through this process. And there's, if I go into the whole probate process, we'll be here all day, but
Right.
because there's different types and things like that. But
So he can't
That's-
just send that will to the insurance or the mortgage
Right,
company.
right.
The mortgage is going to be like,
Correct.
okay,
I
this
didn't
now.
know that.
yeah, and a lot of people don't. So a lot of times the call that I get is I just went down to the clerk's office with the will, and they told me to go find a lawyer, and I don't understand. And it's like, well, because that's kind of how it works,
Ugh, that's
and
annoying.
it is, and there's ways to avoid it. You just have to plan ahead of time.
Right.
You
So
know.
you can get the will and the estate plan done at the same time by your firm,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
How does everybody get started? I mean, like, at what stage of our life should we start looking at this?
Well, you really always should. You always should, because one, you never know, and I am like the queen of doom and gloom, so I could tell you terrible stories.
I don't believe that. You're like the
But-
most bubbly, happy person I know.
She keeps it all inside.
Well, it's when I have those conversations where, like, it's my favorite way to kill people, right? So I'd be like, so your whole entire family is coming back from the best vacation you ever had, and everything was great. Nobody got sunburned. The food was amazing. Drinks were amazing. And all of a sudden, you're on a plane, and it hits them out, and everybody dies instantly. Now what?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to kill you like when you had a bad day. No, like you're coming
Once
back
again,
from the best day ever.
conversations that work well in an
Right,
office.
right. So, but you have to figure, like, my niece, right, when she turned 18, she was so used to my mom, her grandma, doing everything for doctor's appointments, this, that, and the other, right? The kid's getting ready for college, and she's on the tennis team, she's this, she's that. And she's like, Grandma, I need an appointment for, my sports physical. And my mom called up, and they were like, she's 18. So my mom called, my sister, and my sister was like, she tried calling, and they're like, no, your kid's 18.
Oh, I
Sorry.
know. It happened
She
with
has
me
to
with
do it.
Anna. Like when
Right.
Anna turned 18, I called to make her a doctor's appointment, and they're like, yeah, no.
Right.
And I'm like, Anna, you have to do it.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
Ooh, I like that song too.
So do I.
But yeah, that's actually really interesting as far as like they come of age and then all of a sudden, boom.
It's the complexity of the plan that you need that changes.
Well, when we get back, I want to talk about building that plan from start to finish. So everybody stay tuned, and we're going to have more Bad Radio when we get back.
Even my mama thinks that my mind is gone, but I ain't never crossed a man.
Hang on a sec. I got to fix the beginning because I believe
Sorry
somebody
about that.
yapped.
Yeah. No, you remember last week when I switched my script because of Rock and Brews in here, and I forgot to switch it back, and I was like,
It's all
wait,
good.
I don't have Frogger's script in front of me.
All right. Let's see. I'm set here. Hold on. Okay. All right. Final segment for the first hour coming your way here. When you hear the music, that means you have a minute to get all your creds out there, thank everybody, and then that'll be it.
Isn't it crazy how fast that goes?
Yeah.
I mean, especially because, like you said, with her, we had 2 guests, 1 hour.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to hit that we haven't talked about yet?
No, not especially. Yeah.
Yeah, like what I really want to
Yeah.
do now is to build like what it looks like for somebody calls you, this is what they need, or just like best. I don't want to say best practices, but we're trying to direct people to you to make
Right.
that call to get the ball rolling.
Gotcha. Okay.
Stand by.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Ground Up Property Services. With the changing of seasons out there, it's a good time to get your irrigation system serviced, so call Ground Up Property Services today. I don't know about you guys, but I went through a monsoon trying to get here today.
Same.
Yeah. Also, with the season, it's a very good idea to ask or call with Ground Up Property Services about a water sensor so your lawn doesn't get too much water, which again would be today because it was a downpour. And don't forget about the lawn painting service. If you are planning an outdoor event and you want to hide those brown spots on the lawn, call 407-468-4295. And you can also reach them at groundupinc.net. Yeah, we have Ground Up Property Service. We talked about Rick earlier. He has a part of his business where he can paint the brown spots on lawns. So
I
that
didn't
they
know that
look-
was a thing.
I
That's,
know.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. I don't have a green thumb at all, so we
Yeah.
might have to call them at some
Well,
point.
if you have people, if you're having like an outdoor party or something like that, or you have an HOA that's sending you nasty grams, he can fix that. And it's all good. It's not bad
Good
for
for
the
the
environment.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we are here with Kristine Tucker and Joe Coughlan with Coughlan's Law, and we are going to build a scenario right now because my goal is to have people pick up the phone and call you and schedule an appointment to get the ball rolling for their will, for what all this other stuff, so that when something does happen, they're taken care of and they can feel comfortable that that's all in place. So how does someone get started?
Okay. Well, first thing would be to contact us, right? So generally, what will happen is someone will contact and they'll schedule an appointment.
Is it usually
Or-
for a will? Is that when people mostly call you for?
Go ahead.
I would say, honestly, they don't know. And most people don't know. They know they don't have things, and they know they hear bad things that happen, and they know they need something, and they have a fear scenario when they call, and they just start a conversation. And then with the experience, we kind of gear them towards these are the appropriate documents that accomplish your goals.
Is it usually something that triggers people to call you?
Usually, either they saw the difficulty that a different family member went through,
That's what I
or a
was
friend
thinking,
went
a friend
through,
or family member.
or they just discovered that they have an illness, or a friend just passed. It's usually some kind of, because nobody wants to think about this, right? And the truth is, I mean, we're all going to die, right? It's very
know.
depressing,
It
but
is
it's going to
hard.
happen.
I mean, I think I still
still
haven't done
holding out hope.
anything.
Yeah.
Like I had a meeting with Kristine at the end of last year. And I'm like, I'm going to do this, and I still haven't done it.
Right,
Because it's just like one of those things you're just like, I don't want to talk
like, I'm
about
fine, and-
dying or
yeah.
Tom
Right.
dying
But-
or
but
the
you're-
estate.
But you're right. My mom had her aunt passed away, and she was the one who had to do everything.
Yeah.
And after that experience, she learned so much from it that she was like, she's told us, like, we wouldn't even be talking about death. And she would just randomly be like, we're going to make sure everything's okay, so you don't have to
Right.
worry. I'm like, okay, Mom.
Right. And what usually happens, when somebody has that, when I'm talking to someone, right, it's like, of course, the first concern is always avoiding probate and avoiding the mess and all that. So we talk about that first usually. And I always like to start with, tell me what your concerns, your fears, your thoughts. You
Right.
tell me where you want to start the conversation.
So it's kind of like what we call a CNA, client needs
Yeah.
analysis.
Yeah. And then from that point, I always explain, unless someone already knows, like someone who's just been through it, they might know, but I always explain how the probate process works because I believe that if you don't know how it works once you're gone, how do you know what you even want to do, right? So I try to be a little bit collaborative in the process and give options instead of just saying, you need it. It's like we can get here by taking this road or this road. Which way, and know that if we do this, this is what's going to happen. If we do this, this is what's going to happen. Here's what you can expect. And we kind of have those conversations.
But I mean, it sounds like you advise them along the way, depending on what they. Because I always thought that the will was that's it. Whatever the
Same.
will says, that's what happens.
Right.
But it sounds like that's not necessarily the case. I mean, is there times when the judge doesn't allow it to be transferred over if it's in the will?
There are, but that's getting into probate litigation. That's getting into your undue influence. What, Joe?
Yeah, and
Sounds like a whole pot of messy.
And that's the area of the practice where we overlap is with that probate litigation and stuff like that. So it's critical knowing on the planning stage, one, like Kristine just said, what's going to happen when you pass. But then also, what are people in Florida actually taking these to court over and fighting about them? What are they saying in court? What are judges thinking? How are they interpreting these? By doing that end of the practice as well, when we meet a new client and we're doing the planning stage, you have the benefit of all of that, thorough through knowledge.
Okay.
What are they usually fighting about?
I'd say family members.
I know that. I know that.
It's
sad, but
the underlining usually is some sort of emotional issue. Either one, they're having a really difficult time dealing with the grief, and because of that, they're lashing out against each other.
oh, okay.
Or it can be some sort of something happened, 20 years ago at Thanksgiving, and now it's kind of because we have to figure like somebody died, right? That's
Right.
what somebody died. The whole family just lost somebody. So there's all these different elements of grief that come into it, and
Sure.
those will kind of trigger. So sometimes we have people that are fighting over an object that you and I would look at. They'll be fighting over this bag, and it's like, who gets this bag? The bag is essentially worthless when you look at the rest of the estate.
Right.
But those are some of the things that they start, and sometimes you have to talk about the fact that everybody is grieving, and maybe we shouldn't spend the money on this.
I have never thought about that. That makes it that I don't know. I guess I've never been in that situation. So anytime I would hear about family fighting, I'm like, what? Somebody died. Like, what's that all about? Like,
they
chill
want
out.
but like to me, it's money. They to me, I
That's
always
what
think
it-
of they're fighting over
like greed
the
or something. But
monetary.
that
And
sounds.
sometimes it starts as early as when the person just passed, and it's over cremation or burial, or who gets the cremains, or so we've seen.
Very emotional.
Unfortunately, we've seen a few of those recently.
Do you have a counselor or therapist or something that you work with, like that you bring in?
Seriously.
Serious. Like it seems like
No, I don't. And sometimes I kind of pseudo play that role.
yeah.
I bet
But-
you do.
Yeah. Counselor of law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you recommend somebody getting a will and then also an estate plan? Is that correct?
Right. Well, it's a whole estate plan, right? So for some people, a trust is going to be a better option.
Okay.
For some people, a will and, there's certain types of deeds and things that you can do that'll be a better option. For everybody, it's those other documents from when you're alive, because those are going to help. And you don't need them. Like, people think, it's only when I have a stroke or whatever. Quite honestly, like, Joe has power. He's my agent under my power of attorney, right? So I can decide that he's going to stay home and take care of everything, and I'm going to go travel the world. And in the meantime, I want him to go purchase this piece of property for me. And that paper lets him do it. Not that I'd be able to go and travel the world without him.
I know if you're a military family as well, that's really important, because if they're deployed
Right.
and things, I've had to have a power of attorney to be able to.
Right. Because, another misconception, people think that's just because you're married, you can speak on behalf of the
That's
other.
what I thought.
And you cannot.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I think
Is
we
that
might all
different by
remember
state
the
as well?
Terry
No.
Schiavo case from years ago. Regardless of which side you thought, if life should be continued at that stage when someone's terminal or you don't, you get to make that choice for yourself
If
by
I'm a
planning
vegetable,
these
pull
documents.
the plug.
Well, you say
Pull
that, but
it.
if you don't actually write it
I was
down,
gonna say,
nobody can
I
take
just
this
said it on
clip.
national
Right.
radio.
This doesn't count,
Right.
Angela.
No, it doesn't count.
Just turn, you know what I'm saying?
Well, and
Well, the ones that you love are going to have a trial over that
Oh
if
my
you don't
God.
write it down.
Tom, are you watching this?
Right. Right. And, the thing is, too, when you have it in writing, and this is what I tell a lot of my clients, right? When we talk about that living will, which is pull the plug, not pull the plug, right? It's feeding tube or no feeding tube. At that point, we know, like, it's not going to happen until you're terminal. So make sure your loved ones know, and they do it with,
Do it the right way.
comfort.
And
You're
that's
comforting them.
And that
Right.
is with Coughlan's Law.
Coughlan's
So
Law, yeah.
right now, give out all of your contact
Yep,
information.
it's Coughlan's Law. We're 407-440-1911, www.coughlanslaw.com, and that is spelled COUGHLANSLAW.com.
And we didn't get a chance to talk about the Coughlan's Law.
We
Dang it.
didn't.
We're going to have
Next
you on
time.
again.
Next time. All right. And you can find me at strikingbrand.com and email melissa@strikingbrand.com.
All right. Well, I am Angela, and we have another whole hour coming up of BaaD Radio, so stay tuned for more.
You interested in networking with Angela and Melissa? Go to BaaDradio.com. Another hour is coming up next of BaaD Radio.
You guys did great.